Enjoy the creamy hazelnut and chocolate flavor you love from classic Nutella, but make it at home in 20 minutes. Simple, decadent, dairy-free, and would you believe that the cost is potentially on par? Hello, I'm Catherine, and are you like me? When I think of hazelnuts, I think expensive. And I would look at this recipe and think this little jar of homemade Nutella is gonna cost me at least $10. But before I get to showing you how incredibly easy and delicious this downright decadent chocolate hazelnut spread is, I will delve into the cost a little bit, and maybe we'll just throw in some shots of really sexy gooey chocolate to keep you interested. This recipe makes at least 330 grams of homemade Nutella and cost me not $10, but $3.65. That's about $1.10 per 100 grams. If I pull up some grocery store websites, this is a little experiment here. The lowest price that I see on Nutella is Walmart at 96 cents per 100 grams for the bigger size, but $1.33 for the smaller size. And at my local grocery store, $1.21 to $1.52. Okay, let's check a warehouse price. Costco online. Oh, this one requires some math. Hang on a second. 95 cents per 100 grams. And in store, it's always a little bit cheaper than the online price. Oh, and this is traditional Nutella. So if you're coming to this video because you want a dairy-free Nutella, then you're looking at least $3 per 100 grams. Do I still have you? So for this recipe, I use 1 cup or 136 grams raw hazelnuts, half a teaspoon pure vanilla extract, a quarter teaspoon sea salt, an 1/8 cup cocoa powder, an 1/8 cup plus 1 teaspoon maple syrup. That is a very specific level of sweetness there. And today I actually don't have maple syrup, so I'm using agave. 1/4 cup dairy-free chocolate chips, and a 1/4 cup non-dairy milk. I know that the cost of ingredients will vary for everyone, but if you do have a membership to a warehouse grocery store like Costco, then things like nuts, baking supplies, kind of accidentally vegan chocolate chips that we are dangerously low on, I might say, Brian.
Not me.
No, it's definitely me. Getting these things at your warehouse store will allow you to make homemade versions of your favorites for likely the same amount of money, if not less. And if you don't have a membership to a warehouse grocery store, then check your bulk store for sales on nuts, dark chocolate chips, etc. And if you are someone who doesn't care about the cost at all and is thinking just get on with it and show me how to make a delicious chocolate spread that we somehow allow as an appropriate lunchbox sandwich, then here we go. First, preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and roast 1 cup of raw hazelnuts for about 10 minutes, or until your kitchen fills up with this delightful, toasted, nutty smell and the hazelnuts are noticeably browned. Now, these just have to cool down enough that I can handle them and put them in the food processor, but all that's left to do is to blend them up with the rest of the ingredients. The only caveat is that the maple syrup. The chocolate chips need to be melted, and you can do this really quickly in your microwave by putting the chocolate chips in a small bowl, putting them in your microwave for 15 seconds, taking them out, giving them a stir, and then putting them in for another 15 seconds, take them out, give them a stir, and keep doing that until you're able to stir and melt all the chocolate chips. And you don't want the chocolate chips to boil or burn, so just melt them until they're melted. That was a little roundabout way to tell you how to melt chocolate chips in your microwave, but I don't have a microwave, so now I'm going to show you the double boiler method. Add a couple of inches of water to a small pot and balance a heat-safe bowl on top of the pot. The bowl should be big enough that it doesn't touch the water. Place a 1/4 cup dairy-free chocolate chips in the bowl, and when the water starts to boil, the steam will heat up the bowl and start melting the chips. Stir constantly, and after a minute or so, the chips will be melted and you can remove them from the heat. Now that the hazelnuts are cool enough to touch, quickly rub them all over to loosen as many skins as you can. Once the hazelnuts are cool enough to handle, then just kind of rub the skins off of them. And you won't get all of them. This is pretty much as good as this one's gonna get, but you just don't want all those extra skins kind of making your Nutella clumpy. Now let's blend it all up. Toss the hazelnuts in a food processor and pulse to break them down into a coarse texture. Blend for another 30 seconds or so to grind them into a finer meal. Add half a teaspoon vanilla extract, a quarter teaspoon sea salt, an 1/8 cup cocoa powder, an 1/8 cup plus 1 teaspoon maple syrup, and the 1/4 cup melted dairy-free chocolate chips. Blend until combined. Slowly add as much plant milk as needed to thin out the spread to your desired consistency. And you do actually have a few options here. I like using plant milk to thin out the spread, but you can use oil, and that might extend the shelf life of this homemade Nutella by a little bit. Because this doesn't have any preservatives in it or anything, it should last well in your fridge in an airtight container for at least 2 weeks if you use milk, but it might last longer if you use oil. You could also try using water. It might seize back up on you as you're blending, but if you continue to blend after adding the water, then it should smooth back out again. I like using the milk because it adds an extra creamy texture and I get to avoid the extra oils, but either way, it's gonna be pretty delicious. Look at this! When you're happy with the consistency of your homemade Nutella, transfer it to an airtight container or jar and store in the refrigerator. You definitely need to have some of this when you just make it. So I'm going to show you how to make an unreal sandwich. But one last thing to note is that this homemade Nutella will firm up when it sits in the fridge. So this is one that I made a couple weeks ago. We've done a good number on it already. But you can see how it firms up when it's in the fridge. And this homemade version will of course not be quite as smooth as the store-bought Nutella, but it tastes smooth and unreal, so it's okay. When I go to use this, I can just leave it out of the fridge for a few minutes and it will just soften up a bit on its own, especially if you're gonna put it on a warm toast. Otherwise, I can scoop out a bit and add it to a small bowl and just add another little bit of plant milk and give it a stir, and that will smooth it out again. And on that note, I also like to use this as a chocolate drizzle. So I'll warm up a little bit of this with a bit of milk and get it nice and runny and have it as a drizzle on ice cream or pancakes or caramelized plantains, or how many other things can you think of that are absolutely delicious and wonderful and you need to try? I thought I would tell you a funny story related to Nutella while I make this deliciously desserty toast on my homemade sourdough, I might add. I'm very proud of that. So I am of Portuguese heritage, and this didn't happen often, but on at least one occasion that is seared into my memory, I had a sandwich lovingly packed in my lunchbox that was made from something called de boule, aka black pudding, aka blood sausage. And it was black, it was a paste, and it kind of smelled, and kids were asking me what it was and were already sort of making fun of me, and I got so embarrassed that I tried to convince them that it was Nutella, and it most certainly was not, and they didn't believe me and they wanted to taste it, and I was mortified. Kind of not surprising that I then became vegan. For anyone who loves my veganized Portuguese recipes and has noticed that we haven't had any in a little while, don't despair, because we've been working on something very exciting that is full of Portuguese recipes. So keep an eye out for that coming soon. And this homemade Nutella might actually feature in a tripa de aveiro, which, for those of you who don't know, is a delicious sweet crepe that has all kinds of different fillings, sometimes some kind of, I don't know what it is, some sort of egg custardy filling, or things like Ferrero Rocher and Kit Kats and chocolatey goodness, which is why this will be going in there. And also some banana, actually. I'm gonna eat this one because it's a small one. toasted sourdough, homemade Nutella, peanut butter, sliced banana, ground flaxseed, and cacao nibs. An adult version of the classic Nutella sandwich on white bread that I loved as a child. Thank you so much for watching. Both of these recipes, the homemade Nutella and this epic sandwich, are linked below for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today and giving this video a watch. And coming up next, I'm actually going to make a homemade version of another popular spread with my dairy-free cream cheese recipe.